science researchers at the University of Ghana have agreed on the need for a compelling case of actually investments into the food value chain involving some 6 staples following the war in Ukraine, which is affecting the agricultural sector. Director of Research at the West Africa Center for Crop Improvement, Professor Eric Dankwa, has been speaking to my colleague Samuel Kojo-Brace at a high-level emergency consultative meeting to deliberate on food and nutrition security in the country.
Even before COVID-19 and the Ukraine war, most countries in Africa were not on the right path. They were not on the path to meet the Sustainable Development Goal 2. And so even about 3 years ago, countries in the sub-region had to do something about science, technology, and innovation to increase the productivity of the crops that feed the people so that there will be food self-sufficiency. Of course, largely, a number of countries have relied on imports to, if you like, supplement. What we are doing now is to ensure that we create the awareness which ensures that partners understand that we have the innovations around that if we scaled up would meet expectations in farmers' fields. And so the time is now urgent because of the complicating factors. Of course, the Ukraine-Russia war is a signal, of course, but there have been so many other signals like climate change, an important signal, COVID-19, and no one knows tomorrow. That is why we are moving forward in the context of Ghana looking within to meet expectations. So it's urgent for us to think about saving on the import bill on food.
Are you now psyching our minds towards GMOs? Because we've been made to understand per the presentations made so far that the current seedlings or the seeds available are no more adaptive as compared to others, the new crops that you have identified. Is that the situation?
We have not talked about GMOs today. We have talked about hybrid maize and, for example, hybrid tomato, which are important for changing the game. But of course, the GMO story is another story, which African countries have to look at in the fullness of time. In Nigeria, there has been, if you like, the approval to, if you like, cowpea with resistance against the maruca pest. And Ghana has to think forward, look forward. I mean, genetic modification is not per se a bad thing. We have to look at it and ensure that we have the understanding and, of course, the policy, environment, and also the regulation allow us to go forward in using of those, if you like, plants. Nonetheless, in this conversation, we've been talking about hybrid maize, hybrid tomato, which are common globally.
Okay then, so let's assess what it is that we need to do to invest in these 3 staples. Joining us now via Zoom is CEO for Agribusiness Ghana, Anthony Morrison. Thank you, sir, for your time. So here we are. Almost every situation within the agro industry has been blamed on the Russian-Ukrainian war. Is that entirely the case, particularly when we know that things were not too good for us even before this escalation?
I perfectly agree with a good friend, Professor Eric Dankwa here.
Right.
Before the COVID and also the Ukraine war, we haven't seen much of that preparedness of most African countries, especially Ghana. And we also, therefore, do not have a pandemic relief mechanism or resilience. So we were actually in a position not to fight any kind of shocks that will come into our industry. So for that matter, we are having to look for short-term mitigations systems to solve our current problems. So I think that even though we have also inflicted some of these challenges on our own selves, there is a need to go back to the drawing board and like what they are doing with the strategic meeting they are having now. These are some of the ongoing interventions from both the academia and the private sector to find a way to address some of these challenges.
So let's talk about the 3 staples and how to consistently deal with the issue of shortage. For instance, there's maize. as well. Just gone by was the Poultry Farmers Association, who are in fact complaining about how our neighboring countries are taking advantage of the government policies within the country. So how do we address that really? Is it the case that there is generally shortage, or we need to be more protective in our approach towards production?
Well, we have always imported maize. For instance, 2022, 2023, our projections, and as also stated by the United States Department for Agriculture, was 2.5 metric tons.
Right.
Last year, we imported quite about 300,000 metric tons of maize, primarily for the poultry industry, which is the largest employer. What we should be doing now is how we can mitigate some of this. First, do our farmers get what they require, especially when it comes to mechanization? It takes time for them to access mechanization services. Then also, do they get the right seeds? Professor Danko was talking about hybrid seeds.
Right.
So do they get the hybrid seeds? And do they also get the required fertilizers? Because application of fertilizers ought to be done in 3 stages: the right quantity, the right time, and the time of application and all that. So these are key. However, there is also an increasing amount of post-harvest losses on the farms as a result of the poor growth, the bad nature of the road. Sometimes it takes 1 week to drag a truckload of maize from the farm onto the main road. And sometimes most farmers are unable to go back to the farm to move some of this maize or produce onto the market.
Right.
So there are quite an enormous problem with regards to post-harvest.
Giving the figures that you have with you, what's our status, food security-wise?
Well, our buffer stock currently, I don't know the current date, but the last figure we saw cannot even take the country even with 1 month. So we need to get the military. I have always insisted that we need to get the military into agriculture. We need to get the prisons into agriculture, and we need to make sure that we support them actively. Because in other jurisdictions, some of the things we are using in agriculture today in developed countries were done and developed by the military. So we need to go into it. Like, for instance, the drones we are using, the sensors we are using, some of the huge machines for harvesting and tillers were all produced by the military. So we need to get the military in our agriculture to support food security, because issues of food security is a national security issue. However, we have also seen some tax areas where there are also been of a border. For instance, the reduction of the benchmark value, the higher cost of imports, the depreciation of the Ghana cedi, the rising inflation, which is currently at 9.4, and some other taxes that you have to pay at the port when you are importing some of the inputs that are required for productivity.
Right.
So there is a lot of work that needs to be done. However, government now needs to support a lot of commercial farmers. I'm saying commercial farmers here because they can then be used as a pivot to support the smallholder farmers. Direct support for the smallholder farmers is not working. So let's use the commercial farmers, support them heavily, because they can then, take up the guarantee and make sure that they deliver what they are being invested into.
In fact, I was going to mention national service, but then I realized that this is a service which is already grappling with a number of challenges. But what do you think about that? Using the service personnel, changing their focus and pushing much more of the human resource there into issues of agri. Is that feasible?
Yes, the national service is also another way out. In other jurisdictions like South Africa, they have introduced a youth policy where they are actually paying the farms, giving money to the commercial farms, who are paying the youth who are working on these commercial farms, because it's an issue of food security. So we can also adopt a similar measure. They call it, I think, energy for food or something like that. So these are some of the things we need to do. Unfortunately, in our case, national service are losing some of their farms. Currently, I think they have lost about 5 of their major farms. If you go to the Nungua farms, that enclave have been sold out. So we do not even have a peri-urban farming that Kwame Nkrumah envisaged and wanted to put together as a mitigating measure for the urban areas. So we need to be very strategic how fast we are losing our agricultural lands. National Service is a unique organization. They can use their population and drive a lot of productivity, but unfortunately, much of this is not being done. They have Eastern region, they have the BA and the Northern region farms that they can expand. So they also need finance, they need support. They can't do it
all alone,
on their own.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Anyway, Anthony Morrison, thank you for spending some time with us here on The Pulse. You're still watching us. Don't forget that we're back with more stories. We're paying attention to day 2 of the Clocksack strike. Please stay with us.